I would now like to welcome Tanvir Shirokar for the panel, as well as Yihong Chan. We have a couple of questions. We have like, I think, 20 minutes left for the panel discussion with a couple of questions. And if someone from the audience would like to add a question or two, feel free to put them in the chat box. So we will talk about that as well. Next slide, please. Good. The first question that I have, I would like to direct to Yihong and the Asian region, because in the presentation from India, we learned that by December, the workforce will be fully vaccinated, and Sujata had the 2% current level and a forecast for maybe mid next year. Yihong, according to a recent publication from Bloomberg, about 70% of the total population in China seems to have been fully vaccinated twice, so that's already a high number. But how is the situation in Southeast Asia? Countries like Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines. Can you give us any insight on where they are on the vaccination spectrum?
Okay. Now, I don't have exact details, but what I remember is that Thailand is increasing its vaccination rate. I think they are not 50% yet, right? And for Malaysia, it's quite advanced. It's almost 80% or so. Singapore is 84% of the population has been vaccinated, right? And generally at different degrees, but I would say that countries are ramping up their vaccination rate. So I can make a guess that maybe by end of the year, most countries should at least more than 50% vaccination rate for Southeast Asia countries.
Okay, thank you. Then let's maybe move to the second question. We have seen, obviously, in the various regions and markets, mounting debt on the government side for the public sector, giving loan programs or social assistance to the population, paying for vaccines. But we have also seen raising debt on the company levels, getting through the COVID pandemic and making sure there is enough cash in the accounts. Obviously, that has led to, in certain cases, an increase in non-performing loans and assets, which will have to be worked out. Just going back to the presentation we saw from India, I think one number there, if I saw that correctly, was an amount of about 100 billion in debt, bad debt, basically, which has to be worked out over the next couple of months and quarters. So how has this trend and the situation shaped recently for distressed assets? And maybe where you can elaborate on the situation and also the opportunities maybe for distressed investments in India, please.
Yeah, hi. So traditionally, for lenders in India, the recovery was collateral based. Okay, so you go and lock the factories, and then there is a process to recover those assets. But with the advent of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which we call IBC, the creditors could now tap the enterprise value of the company. Okay, so this code provides for a time-bound resolution with a predefined waterfall for different types of creditors. In fact, IBC has helped to improve the recovery rate from 26% as we could see in the earlier regime to 43%. And the recovery time has also reduced from 4 to 6 years to 1 to 2 years. So this has a huge positive implication for distressed debt investors. Just to give an example, SR Steel was in a debt, and the debt was around $7 billion, and the liquidation value was around $2.5 billion. But with IBC process, there was a sale to strategic investors, and that could garner around $6 billion for the creditors. So you see, the IBC has played a major role in unclogging banks' balance sheets, and and pushing it for reallocation of capital for more efficient use. So as the IBC is evolving, we see that the acquisitions of distressed assets is increasing, and because the investors are getting more valuable and high quality assets at a discounted value. Just to give an example, in mid 2017, there were 12 large accounts which went under IBC process, and 9 qualified for lucrative mergers and acquisitions and fetched a worthwhile recoveries from the bank's perspective. Okay, so we also see recently investments from few international players, private equity and pension funds, who have shown interest in investing in distressed assets. So the distressed asset situation was not just on account of COVID. In fact, it was before COVID also. But COVID increased this stress. But at the same time, there were policy and regulatory measures from the government to revive the negative effects and preserve the financial stability, like increasing the moratorium on debt repayments, policies in regards to asset class reclassification norms, and then expanding liquidity in the system to resolve the normalcy. I just also want to highlight some challenges faced in M&A of distressed assets and what are the opportunities for the investors. So basically, there are valuation challenges, valuation of assets that needs to be adequately insulated from the promoters and the owners, because normally they use proxies to derail the bidding process or jack up the valuations. The speed is very critical. At the same time, you need to retain the employees. You need a proper plan to, how to make the company profits or turn around the company in future. And you also need to assess the reputational damage which has been caused with key vendors and customers. In terms of opportunities, acquiring these distressed assets would give the companies acquisitions of employees or talent or business processes, expanding customer base, and of course you get a value at a very discounted price. So yes, the stage is set for investors with patient capital looking to invest in Indian distressed assets space, as the regulatory framework has evolved and the risk return profile is quite attractive.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Tanvir. It's interesting to hear that the recovery rate has risen substantially on the outstanding debt. That's really impressive. Sujata, can you maybe in a minute or two briefly talk a little bit about anything you have seen in distressed asset investments in East Africa? Is there a lot of activity, or is that still building up?
Okay, so in Tanzania in particular, the distressed assets have definitely increased due to COVID-19 impact, but so similar to the situation in India, it is offering good assets at a very good quality assets at a very reasonable price, as opposed to in the past but the investment in these assets at the moment is very, very slow, because like I mentioned, that Africa, and particularly East Africa, has been impacted a lot. So people are kind of holding on, and they're not investing that much. But obviously, the financial institutions, the banks and all, have been affected badly, and the bad debts have increased. So that has caused financial strain. Unfortunately, there has been no support from the government. So the situation is still like, critical. But we are hoping that, the opening up of the market and the change in policy, and, our government is trying to put in place incentives for attracting foreign investments and creating an enabling environment, and that will help in reviving the sectors. But obviously there has been quite a lot of insolvencies due to that, and particularly the tourism sector, the hospitality sector has been affected a lot, but this has also encouraged mergers and acquisitions, and thereby creating opportunities for us in the form of carrying out due diligence, particularly at the time of mergers and acquisitions. And obviously, that has created opportunities for us in as consultants, to provide that support.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Besides the distressed asset investment, how do you both, let's talk a little bit more about India and then East Africa. What about other investment areas and trends that you see once, let's say, COVID is behind us, in like whenever it will be in the region, maybe 2022, 23, 24? Where do you see the focus of foreign direct investment going?
Yeah. So,
please.
Yeah. In terms of India, the emerging trends, in fact, the companies after post-COVID are working towards making their supply chain more resilient, and even the production systems. Because of travel restrictions and social distancing norms, we see, advanced technologies are being used to serve the people. So in terms of opportunities for investments, sector-wise, first is healthcare, technology and infrastructure, because this sector needs upgradation at every level, right from infrastructure development to delivery to process management. And there is already a green signal by the government to telemedicine and doorstep drug delivery, so which has thrown a lot of opportunities for investment in this sector. There is use of artificial intelligence, robotics, right? So all these things are making this sector very attractive. Second was automotive, and there is a transition to hybrid or electric vehicles. So that is the area where we see a lot of investments and collaborations. India is also becoming a hotspot for offshoring of automotive design and engineering services, and being seen as a favored sourcing destinations for automotive components for various international companies. The third is retail. In fact, retail is one sector which is affected both positive and negative ways. The longer the COVID, I think the greater the chance to move to online and omni-channel purchasing, and there we are seeing a lot of deals happening. Electronics, basically India depends a lot on China for batteries and e-vehicles, but government is also pushing for local manufacturing, and there are incentives being offered. So there is immense potential for manufacturing of such products for captive consumption also, and for a base for exports also. Then there is education, technology and vocational training, where we see a lot of deals. Insurance is one sector, because large population of India is without any insurance. And the crisis of this scale has increased the need to obtain insurance.
Sure.
So we see significant uptick, in this sector also.
Tanvir, excuse me that I interrupt, but I'm getting here a signal that we have only 4 minutes left.
Absolutely.
And I would like to the next two questions combine into one. There's a lot of publication and talk about the supply chain disruptions. There are empty shelves in some supermarkets and hyperstores in the US and sometimes even in Europe. Due to COVID, there has been a halt in some car manufacturing plants in Europe, North America, and even here in Brazil because of missing semiconductor and electronic elements and chips. What I found, and Yihong, maybe that is a question for your region. What I really found interesting is the trend that before COVID, some foreign direct investment left China, went to maybe Vietnam, Thailand, or other countries in the region. And that trend then really turned around during COVID. So you have more companies opening in China with foreign direct investments. My question here is, how do you see that over like the next 3-4 years? Was this just a short reaction due to COVID? Or do you think that will be continuing? And then the second, and you talked a little bit about this in your presentation about the energy mix and the problems that might appear here. I don't want to force you to give a weather forecast for Beijing in February next year, but maybe you can elaborate of some of the things that we talked before, which for most of us are not really on our daily radar screen. Please, yeah.
Okay. So maybe I take your second question first, which is on the energy part of things, right? China has embarked on the climate change measures to bring down the carbon emission. So it has set ambitious target to become carbon neutral by 2060. That target may have to shift because, as we can see from COVID, the cause major supply disruptions and people are now looking at how to ramp up or how to get back to their production level. So the obvious solution is, look, if I had been doing well in China, China being a reliable manufacturer, and in order to meet my demand from my customers, the obvious answer is to get back to your manufacturing plants in China. So, and therefore plants are moving back to China. So in terms of the weather and the energy thing, because February next year, it's going to be the Winter Olympics. So China is going to hold the Winter Olympics. Obviously, it wants to project a clear sky and a good host, and the last thing you want to see is fog all over the place. So, and because it is China, I mean, if the government says do something, everybody will do. And what I observe is that, like what I observed in 2008, the Beijing Olympics, the authorities practically flushed the streets, water jet the streets, and shut all the factories that produce a lot of carbon and stuff like that, just to make sure that the sky is clear. So what I heard is that will kind of support the government policy now to try and bring down the burning of coal and stuff like that. But again, it runs against this supply chain disruption objective. So government, I read and I was told that just very recently the authorities have reversed again its policy to ask the coal to continue to produce more coal and companies to burn more coal so that more energy is produced and so that factories can work. So the authorities trying to make sure that all this shortage in supply will be met from now. And in terms of the change in the supply chain structure, I can't really tell beyond 5 years, but I think for the next 2-3 years at least, and assuming COVID is still with us, any prudent producer or manufacturer would want to be a reliable supplier of goods. So the obvious solution might well be to continue the production in China. So that would be my view, maybe at least for the next 2-3 years.
Okay, thank you so much, Yi-Hong, for your view on this. I certainly agree that COVID will still be with us for longer than we all want. And so 2-3 years is probably a very realistic time frame until it's really, I don't want to say disappearing. It will go from a pandemic to a more endemic virus, but just looking at vaccination progress in Africa, that still has to get to a level where Asia and Europe are booster shots, then we're very quickly in the year 2023. And probably supply chain disruptions will be with us for a couple of quarters or maybe two years until everything will sort itself out. I want to, given that we are 2 minutes before the end of our planned time, see if we have any questions from the audience for the panelists. Anyone with a question? No, apparently not. Then I would like to thank very much Sujata, Tanvir, Yi-Hong, and Monique for their presentations and the participation in the panel. Thank you all for attending.